everyone, Laura from Gold Star Work here. Today I am going to carry on with a painting that I started previously, and I will put a link in to the first part of this painting. And I'm going to show you how to mix believable greens for leaves and grass with just using 3 different colours. Now I've used 3 different colours and white in this painting. Okay, let's get started. So I am going to use some Cadmium Yellow Light, and I'm going to use my Quinacridone Magenta, and I'm going to use Cerulean Blue. So you can make any kind of green you want. I'm going to be looking at some greens for a tree. So I just want to show you that you don't have to buy a million green paints, and you don't have to buy a million different coloured paints. You can do it with just 3 colours. So get my brush. I am using a number 8 flat brush. This is actually a watercolour brush, but I really like these brushes for doing my painting with and for mixing with. So I'm just wetting my brush down. Got my little paper towel, so I just want to get a little bit of water on paints, and I'm going to mix some blue. So mix blue and red, because this pinky colour, this magenta colour, is essentially my red, and I get a beautiful purple. And then I can mix some yellow in, and of course it'll start going green. So we have got a kind of a grey green here. Can you see that? It's gone quite grey. Probably need a little bit more yellow to show up the green in it. So hopefully you can see that. So traditionally when you make green, you think blue, yellow makes green, which it does. So we've got green, but very often this, depending on which blue and which yellow you use, it's going to make a green that doesn't really look that natural because it's a bit too bright. So if any green that's too bright, you want to put in a bit of the red. And start with a little bit, because it can change quite quickly. So you can see the difference in how bright that is and how it goes a little bit grayer. And if I put more yellow in, I can make it lighter. So we're getting a spring fresh grass green here. And that little bit of that little bit of red just tones it down a bit, so that it's not too bright and looks more natural. And then if you want to grey it down even more, and you start getting that really khaki type of green that you see more in a natural green. And then if you want to make it darker, add bit more blue. Now I will never get this green the same as this one. As soon as you start greying it down, it will never be the same as this clearer green here. So you always want to think about how you're mixing and what you want to do with it. So I'm going to put a little bit of this red over here. Well, that was a lot of red actually. I'm going to need some more yellow. So yellow and red make orange. And if I want to make this a bit more green, put in some blue. And I'm getting a browny kind of green. So depending on what you start with, makes it easier to mix what you want. Oops, got some of that purple in there. Doesn't really matter because I'm only using 3 colours. Now what happens if your mixture goes too blue? See, this is a very grey, darker blue kind of green. That would look really nice as your shadowy parts on your tree for the leaves and things. Can you see that? But if I thought, oh, that's too grey, all I have to do is add a bit more yellow in, and it just brightens that green up a bit. But it's still darker than this. And although it probably doesn't look that different on camera, it is significantly different. And even, I put more yellow in so you can see more. Hopefully you can see that. Might need to, actually, well, I might go and get a piece of paper. So I'm just using a canvas pad. Can't get it all in. There we go. So it's just a piece of canvas pad, which looks like this. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the texture, but it is made for acrylic and oil painting. And it's a medium texture. So if I put this down here, I want to show you the greens. I just need to wash my brush out. So we've got our bright green here that has no red in it at all. That's just the yellow and the blue. And then with a bit of the red in it and mixing more yellow to make a more grassy green. Now I have mixed out that really grassy green, so I'm just going to mix in a bit more yellow to show you, so you can get a really grassy green. Now if I don't put the red in it, I'll show you the difference. Just make sure my brush is clean. So if I don't put the red in it and I just put a bit more yellow in this one, you can see the difference in the colour. So although this is a really pretty green, and you might use this for really fresh foliage maybe on certain bushes, this one here is just a bit more greyed down and looks more natural. Takes a bit of washing, make sure I get all the paint out. And then this one here, where I added in a bit more of the purple, a bit more of the yellow, a bit more of the blue, sorry. It's a good dark foresty green. And if I want to make it even darker, I can add more of the purple, which is the blue and the red mixed together. Now, this one here has gone very grey. So if it goes like that, you just need to add a little bit more yellow. And you see now it's gone too yellow, so that tells me I need more of the blue. So you can experiment around until you get the colour you want. Just because you can't get it quite right first time round, you just play with small mixes first. So here's my dark green. See how dark And nice and grey that is, but it's still reading green. It is not grey, it's a greyed green. So really good for the shadows and things. See, this one here is a bit lighter because I've added more yellow, and this one's darker. And you can see how the colours are reading quite different, but they will, all these greyed colours will work really well together if you're making a tree or something. So let's actually do a little bit of painting with my greens. So I have got this painting here that I have started. Now I have got a video where I started this. So basically I've done all the background and I've got the tree trunks and things, and I want to add foliage now. So I'm going to use my greens, and I'm going to start off with a medium green. So this one, I'm not going to start with my darkest or my lightest. I'm going to go in with my medium green. I need a bit more water on my brush. I'm actually going to need more paint than this because this isn't enough paint. That's another thing that often beginner painters do. And you see how easy that was to mix? Because I've already mixed it before, I know pretty much how much I need of each colour. But something else that a lot of beginner painters do is they don't start with enough paint. They use little tiny bits of paint, little tiny brushes, and you don't want to go too small. Now this isn't a huge brush, it's a round brush and it's a number 6, but it's not tiny either. I haven't got a very big canvas here. And I'm just going to group where I want my foliage to go. And I'm not trying to make leaf shapes. The brush naturally kind of makes a leaf shape, so I'm not being too fussy. But I want to leave a little gap, so I don't want to fill in the whole thing, but I also don't want big clumpy lots. And you can see I'm putting the brush down in kind of random patterns, and the brush is naturally making little leafy shapes, so I don't have to go around and paint every single leaf. The eye will tell me it's leaves from what's in the picture. And I'm going around the edges of my words here because I want to blend that in with my painting. So this is a painting that I did. It's kind of a memory of my husband who recently died. And it's taken me a while to get back to it because, as you can understand, it's been a pretty emotional time. So I'm just dabbing this on where I want the leaves to go, and I'm not dabbing it all over. I'm being quite purposeful about where I want these leaves to go, and I'm still using that same colour. So I'm going to let that bit dry off a bit because I don't want the next colour to mix in with it too much. And so while I'm doing that, I'm going to do some of the grass. So I want to go down into my bright greens here, and I may even decide to go a bit brighter, but I'm going to start off here. I'm going to mix a bit more of this medium colour in to tone that down a little bit. Because I just want to go around the edges of all these words. And I'm using a slightly different motion with the grass because I want it to look more like grass and less like leaves. So, I am going to change my brush for the grass as well at some point. So I'm kind of pulling up so that it gets a grassy look. I'm going into the lighter yellow, and because I've got a lot of yellow in these areas, I'm going to mix even more yellow. and I'm going to mix a little bit more red, and the reason for this is I want to make it a more browny yellow. So it's going to a more khaki yellowy colour. Oops, and that was too much because now it's gone really brown. Now I'm just going to mix what I've got on my brush in there, and I'm actually going to use some of that because I have got some of that colour in my painting. It's still green, but next to the other greens it looks almost brown. In fact, I'll put some on the canvas so you can see. That's that colour I'm using now, so it's a really khaki kind of green. So I'm going to use that to just blend in these words. And this is kind of the background medium colour of the grass. My brush is pretty dry now, and so I'm just going to, it's like dry brushing, just blending in the words a bit. So this isn't completely dry up here, but it's dry enough that I can do the next bit. So I'm going to get some of my dark colour, so I'm going to use this really dark colour here and go around some of my areas that I want to recede into the background, like up here. And I'm actually going to mix a bit more blue in with some of this dark. I'm going to need some more paint, so I'll just get some more paint. Some people are very tidy with their painting palettes and very organised. I am not. I usually use a palette that won't dry out in a hurry, but for this demonstration I'm using a plate because it is easier to see on camera. Now as you can see, I've made this way too red, but that's okay because I can just put more colour in, and if you mix it next to the colour you're trying to make, it makes it easier to see what you're doing. And now this is going to be way too yellow, and I'm going to need a whole bunch of blue because now I've made poopy brown. How do I know that's poopy brown? Because we just got a little kitten and it's pooping everywhere, and that's the colour of its poop at the moment because its diet has drastically changed because we found it as a stray under our house. So here I've got a really bluey grey green, and I'll show you on here. So that is even darker than that dark green, and it's more blue. And you don't have to mix the colour as well as I am doing. I'm just mixing it that well to show you, because if you have, I'll show you here, if I've got a little bit of blue here that isn't mixed in, if I just pick that on my brush, it gives you variation that you wouldn't have got if you had mixed the colour very carefully, and that's more natural as well, to have bits of variation going on. So I'm fine with having that there. In fact, I'm going to use some of that over this side as well. And just don't be too precious about where you're putting it and how it's placed, but you do want some gaps so that it doesn't just look like a blob of paint. Wash my brush. Now I'm going to go in with some lighter green, and I'm wiping the extra paint off my brush, and I'm going to go in with this colour here now. This is already trying to a little bit, and I think my daughter stole my spray bottle, so I'm going to have to go find my spray bottle. And a tiny bit of red. And a little bit more yellow. So that's the leaves all coming out. And I'm going to be very sparing over here because I don't want too much of that colour over this side. Then I'm going to go in with the yellow here, and while the paint is wet, I'm just going to put some little bits of yellow for extra light. Now, I'm going to do some more on the grass, and for that I am going to use one of these fan brushes. And this is a number 2 fan brush, and it's a stiff one, because you can get soft ones, like this one's very soft fan brush, and this one's a stiffer one. I like the stiff ones. I've got another stiff one here. I like the stiff ones. Actually, I might use this one because I like them when they're more beaten up, and stiffer the better for grass. And this one is also a number 2. It's just older. So I'm going to go in with this brown colour, which is drying out. So because I'm using interactive paints, the Atelier interactive ones, I can reactivate this very easily with a spray bottle of water, which I'm going to do. I'm just mixing up a bit more so you can see a bit more mixing, and because I needed more paint. I'm going to put a little bit more green. And I'm going to wipe that on my paper towel because I've got way too much paint on my brush, and now you can see, hopefully, that the bristles are showing. I can just use that in a kind of dry brush method, but I do need to get my spray bottle, so I'll go get that. Okay, so I've got my spray bottle. I've got, it's just an old hair bottle that I use. It's just got plain water in it. Same with this, it's just a little travel cosmetic bottle that it's just got water in it, and I can just spray my plate. So just spray my plate, but you want a fairly fine spray. You don't want one that sprays a ton on there. And this one's a bit, and it just makes it workable again. And then I can go in and do little grassy bits. And I'm going to get some of the yellow and mix that in further. And I want a little bit more blue. Now this is where it really pays to not mix your colour too much. See, I'm dipping it into there, so I've got different things on my brush, because it just makes it easier to make the grass multicoloured. Also works well with rocks, doing it that way. Yeah, I'm just drying off my brush, and I used my finger because I couldn't see the words. I had painted too much on the words. And so there is how you mix some very natural, believable looking greens for a landscape with using just these three colours. With just three colours is really easy. And you don't need a whole lot of different tubes of green paint. You can do it perfectly well without that. And this whole painting is done with just these three colours and the white. So there is no other tubes of paint used in this picture. So if you want to be able to start painting and not buy too many coloured tubes of paint, because paint is not cheap, here's how you do it with just three colours. So here is what we have ended up with so far. This painting is still not finished, and what I want to do in the next video with this painting will be doing some light streaks, which I have got here in this painting. You can see the streaking light coming through, and I want to show you how I achieved that in this painting, but on here. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time for part 3. And here's what we got so far. You might be able to see it better. So see you later. Bye.